This is exciting. Just wanted to say to everybody, thank you for all the well wishes. Thank you for all the congratulations and the high fives. It's an anniversary. You know, Hurricane Sandy, 12 years ago? Was that it? I lose track. The beginnings of Brigantine now. That's right. Every time Hurricane Sandy rolls around, I think about how we got started with BrigantineNow.com. It was created as a training tool to help local newspapers figure out the internet. But when Hurricane Sandy was bearing down on Brigantine, I go, I bet the newspapers won't be able to be printing or delivering, thus no news to all the people that evacuated the island. Radio stations get knocked off the air. So I bet the interwebs will help people stay in touch. And that's how Brigantine Now got started. Go to BrigantineNow.com and just do a search for Hurricane Sandy. But that's not the exact reason why we're on today. Last night is why we're on right now. Put some time into thinking about what I witnessed last night at the Brigantine City Council meeting, November 1, 2023. It seemed uneventful, but a lot of stuff happened. Here's some slides. Over the next couple of minutes, we'll talk about the commercialization of Brigantine, how spot zoning, come on, don't tell me spot zoning is going to be used in Brigantine. Over there in Ventnor, the Ventnor police chief said these weekends, these party weekends, you know what's causing the dangerous situations with DUIs and all kinds of arrests? It's the short-term rentals. I'm going to show you that video from a few weeks ago. The Ventnor Mayor Landgraf talks about Brigantine. Why isn't the Brigantine Planning Board using Zoom and letting you see and hear and smell everything going on? They don't want you to see how the sausage is made. But if there's one thing that would be the most beneficial to taxpayers and residents of Brigantine, turn the cameras on. Let people watch how you're deciding about variances and McMansions and tearing down cottages or digging into a dune to enlarge somebody's backyard. We'll talk about the planning board, how important it is for everybody to know everything they're doing immediately. Air DNA will show you what's really going on. And a couple other things I thought about, but let's get started, shall we? Yes, it's commercialized. The city is going from residential, quiet, family-based to Fort Lauderdale along the Jersey coast. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with short-term rentals. But what's happening here, it's a total aggressive land grab is what's going on. And they're not being transparent at all. The Brigantine councilman and the mayor right there in the middle, Karen Bew, the deputy mayor, Paul Lettieri, the councilman, staying very quiet. Real estate guy, Mike Reardon, not saying anything. And this thing, spot zoning. Do we see that happening in Brigantine? Short-term rentals? You know, okay, you can do this. You can't do that. Every house will pick and choose. Are they commercial? Do they have to abide by statewide parking requirements? Do they? So, just keep thinking about this spot zoning thing. It's being discussed. If you watch both the Brigantine council meetings and the Ventnor council meetings, the commissioner meetings, they're talking about the same things, but it's almost like they're in two different worlds. And I like to record everything. So what exactly is spot zoning? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Brigantine Now, the real deal of what's going on along the shore. With so few voters down here, who knows how your money's being spent? And more importantly, how are the planning boards modifying your dream place, your happy place? So it's November 2, 2023. So what is spot zoning? According to Google, it's the application of zoning to specific parcels of land within larger zoned areas when rezoning is at odds with the city's master plan and current zoning restrictions. Yep, it's true. Brigantine needs to update their master plan. Sure, you can do it every 10 years, but you also have to modify and update the master plan when significant changes at any time. Lance will tell you that's true. Lance Landgraf. He knows that. He's the mayor of Ventnor. He helps Brigantine with all this stuff. The master plan is the game plan. And they're going to drag their feet in updating this thing because there's a lot more coming. That residents of Brigantine, they better pay attention. So spot zoning is the word of the day that you must learn about. Remember last week it was disclosure was the other vocabulary word I wanted you to learn all about. Disclosure. Is your realtor friends, are they telling you exactly what's going on in that neighborhood that you're considering buying into? That's all. It's called disclosure. And last night, there's Andrea Sullivan. She's taken all the arrows. She's being harassed by non-residents, by entrepreneurs trying to build a business saying, who the heck are you? Nasty letters, threats, because she's a whistleblower saying, yo, what's going on over here? Illegal parties across the street, buses rolling up. Where are these people coming from? And so Andrea last night was talking about how it's important that the planning board, which people are starting to wake up, they're the ones driving this bus. They lack transparency. People barely know who's on the planning board in Brigantine. There's no live video streaming or YouTube clips to watch the planning board in action. They don't want you to see how the sausage is made. What do you say? Let's listen to Andrea real quick here.
These 8 and 9 bedroom with adjoining full baths, basically we consider motels in disguise. Is there any way, because people don't know this until they see it going up, is there any way we can televise these planning board meetings and broadcast them so people at home can see, whoa, look what's coming up and look what's going to be built and look what's just been approved or look what they're proposing? Just like, sunlight shining on everything? Possible?
I think you make the assumption that every large house is a short-term rental.
No, some of the new ones are questionable.
But all right, so it sounded like the statement you were trying to make is that every large house is a short-term rental.
You see, Mayor Sera of Brigantine doesn't want to answer the question that was asked, and that is, why are you not live streaming these planning board meetings, kind of the same way you do at the council meetings? It's in the same room, the same equipment. Why aren't you turning the camera on for the planning board meetings? On more than 2 occasions last night, November 1, Mayor Sera of Brigantine skirted the question, how come you're not live streaming, letting us watch the planning board meetings, especially since 75% of the taxpayers don't live in Brigantine full time? That's why there's no trust when you literally see they don't care about 3/4 of homeowners in Brigantine. No, you're not allowed to watch the Brigantine planning board meetings. No, you're not allowed to. Even though we can flip the switch and you can watch online. We will not trust anybody up on city council in Brigantine until they turn the cameras on for public meetings. It's real simple. But the planning board, that's where the big bucks are made. They change zoning. They let you build this. You don't need setback. You need a front yard pool, not density,
These 8 and 9.
So it's true. Just a few weeks ago, the Ventnor police chief was speaking at a Ventnor commissioner meeting, and he talked about how dangerous it's getting, especially for the past 2 years, Memorial Day weekend, and he connects short-term rentals with that. Let's watch that real quick. Here's from a few weeks ago.
One of the things that I'm seeing the last several years is the Memorial Day weekend, I'd say busiest and kind of most dangerous times, the calls and the types of calls and the people we're dealing with, over that weekend, a different type of crowd. And so, for example, our Memorial Day weekend, last several years, we did the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, over 90 calls a day in the last 2 years. 90 calls a day.
90 calls a day.
Yeah, there was about 370 calls for service over that Memorial Day weekend. About 365 was in 2022. And there was 12 arrests, DWIs, alcohol-related disturbances, fights, noise complaints. But the last 2 years, that Memorial Day.
So what do you attribute that to?
I can tell you, be honest with you, I think it's the short-term rentals. I think the college crowd is over that Memorial Day weekend. We had 18 motor vehicle crashes. 3 resulted in DWI arrests of persons that were under the age of 25.
Okay.
So it's that type of crowd that's coming,
The
you know.
younger crowd of Memorial.
Yeah, I think college kind of, you know, is just getting out and
Yeah.
And look, Brigantine is really having a problem with it. They've got a whole core of their community that homes were built for short-term rentals where they have 8 bedrooms in them. It's problematic. They just introduced, I think they just adopted an ordinance that will significantly pull that back. They're going to do a cost per, I forget, I think $25 per bedroom fee, because they're going to have to hire people to get in there and do that. They estimated their costs in the $500,000 range to manage the short-term rentals over there. They're leaning towards an ordinance that would designate them as commercial uses,
right,
and then create the locations in the city that they would be conditionally approved.
to operate under, correct, yeah.
And then that way you can change the parking demand. The 2 of the biggest issues is noise and overcrowding. And then the third one is parking. So the problem, if the home is designated as residential, you're under the residential site improvement standards state passed. The maximum number of parking spaces you can require for a house is 3, no matter how many bedrooms. That's now not a residential property. That's a short-term rental, commercial use. You can set your own parking standards.
There you go. That's called spot zoning. That's what some people think. So I'll play it again, but this is the stuff that's not getting in newspapers. No one's talking about it, but this is huge. Talk to your real estate friend there, whoever you know in real estate. Ask them about this stuff. You could be living on a block where you're living in a residential neighborhood, the A zone, for decades. The house passed down generation to generation in your family. But you're going to find out that across the street, that little bungalow was knocked down. A big 10-bedroom place was built. And they're going to have somebody with the expertise, Mayor Landgraf of Ventnor, who helps the planning board in Brigantine write these ordinances. He's also, he does planning for the CRDA, the Atlantic City Tourism District. This guy knows what he's doing. Sometimes he does great work. Other times, he does stuff that's not very savory, it's not good. And if you're not keeping an eye on these decisions, on these meetings, you'll wake up one day and say, holy geez. So anyway, it seems as if he's talking about, he's going to give advice to Mayor Sera of Brigantine and help write a new ordinance, an updated ordinance that will allow them to pick and choose who lives by what rules. That's spot zoning. So just one more time here, because it's really important to understand this.
You're under the residential site improvement standards, $1 million range.
And real quick, he's showing that, hey, once we change this from residential to commercial, you don't have to follow any parking issues. He's like excited about that. This is very experimental, because every other town anywhere across the country, especially along the coast, the shore, destinations, they're cracking down, they're restricting, they're thinking through, how do we take advantage of short-term rentals but control the town, not letting the short-term rentals control us. Brigantine's doing it the opposite way. They're going whole hog, and we're going to do what we want because there's so few voters here, and everybody is scared to call these individuals out that are changing the rules. Talk to your realtor. Ask them, hey, can you disclose? Are there zoning changes going on? Your realtor's going to hate hearing this, but they're still reeling over the fact that the National Association of Realtors, NAR, convicted, guilty of collusion. Ask them about that, and ask them about double-siding a deal, commissions. There's no such thing as a standard 6%. You know that, right? Talk to your local realtor about that. They'll help you out with that. The real money, everybody, is at the planning board level. The planning board level, all right?
Manage the short-term rentals over there. Costs in the $500,000 range to manage the short-term rentals over there. They're leaning towards an ordinance that would designate them as commercial uses,
right,
and then create the locations in the city that they would be conditionally approved.
to operate under, correct? Yeah.
And then that way you can change the parking demand. The two of the biggest issues is noise and overcrowding. And then the third one is parking. So the problem, if the home is designated as residential, you're under the residential site improvement standards state passed. The maximum number of parking spaces you can require for a house is 3, no matter how many bedrooms. That's now not a residential property. That's a short-term rental, commercial use. You can set your own parking standards. It's not a residence. So if we get to that point, because I'm going to be working with Ventnor Sera and their team over there to write that ordinance for the planning board. They used a lot of our stuff in our ordinance. And then we're going to probably use some of their stuff if we need to. It's open communication, so that information is helpful.
And I think you did a good job with kind of creatively with, so what you did, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to train our officers to say, kind of speak to the owner. If you're not the owner, you kind of find in that interview.
Oy. Next, let's see here. The next slide I wanted to show is, just to recap, there's a reason why you're not able to watch a planning board meeting online through Zoom or through YouTube, archive, or in real time. But you should be able to because the technology exists. It's cheap. It's free. They don't want you to see how the sausage is made. The Brigantine Planning Board, until you get them to turn the cameras on so that you can watch in real time online, not just Channel 97, Miss Bew, but how do you reach everybody through the internet? You're not turning on the cameras. You already do it for the commissioners and the council meetings. Why not do it for the planning board? That's where the real money is made, right? You know that's true. And the planning board, of course, is controlled and handpicked by Mayor Sera. So every time you hear Mayor Sera of Brigantine say, well, we're going to get back to the planning board, that's you, sir. That is you. He always makes it like it's some other entity over here. He does it very smartly, adroitly. But he is the king. That's the thing about these small towns. When you're the mayor, you control the school board, the commissioners and the councilmen, the planning, everything. Who's on the planning board? These are the guys making decisions about who can build what and the future of your investment in Brigantine and whether or not you're going to be forced to turn your house into an Airbnb. Or your price valuations are going to go all over the place when they do a reval, and you're going to have a tough time selling your house, or you're going to get underwater real fast. Paul Lettieri, he's a councilman from Brigantine. He's on the planning board. Maria Sacco-Handel, a great realtor. She's on the planning board. Sometimes I wonder, are they chiming in on the rules and regulations, or do they just sit there and let Mayor Vince make all the rules? And Mr. Brindisi, which I believe is the chairman of the planning board. Chaser Gaffney, local guy. He's also an architect, I believe. Mike Brindisi, the builder. He's been the chairman, I guess, of the planning board in Brigantine for quite some time. I sometimes wonder, do these guys recuse themselves on occasion? The solicitor of Brigantine's on the planning board. So is the engineer. And Lance Landgraf, the mayor of Ventnor, he assists the planning board. He admits he's going to help write updated ordinances in regards to commercial versus residential, spot zoning, if you will. Lance Landgraf is also, he does the same thing for the city of Atlantic City, the tourism district. He's the guy associated with the CRDA, Casino Reinvestment Development Authority. He does a great job. Lance does really good work, but he can also do things that are not good. So you just have to be respectful and keep an eye on everything he does. That's all. He's really a smart guy. He saved the Ventnor movie theater. He did a lot of good things, but he also was capable of not doing some things that, whatever. It's like a knife, two-edged sword, or the good and bad, I guess I should say. But you can't allow people who are controlling the direction of land use. Holy gee, it's a land grab. That's why they call him Lance Landgraf. He didn't like when I called him that. Cabala's a secretary, Ralph Palatucci, Dory Herndon, Frank Alberti. You got to talk to these folks and say, what's going on? Why you turn on the cameras, the video, the audio, the live streaming online on Zoom and YouTube? The reason why they're not doing it because these meetings are uncomfortable for the public to see in their estimation. Okay, let's see. Where are we going now? I got so many slides here. And, if you want to dig deeper, it all turned out for the best. But this story over in Down Beach Buzz, where Landgraf and the planning board admitted they made a mistake. They sent out notifications to 200 feet around this big project. Whoopsie daisy. We didn't do it the right way, but the vote still stands. Yes, there was an error. Lance Landgraf said, yes, there was an error in the list that was provided. The 200 feet notification for a big development. Hey, we got to let these neighbors know something big's going on if you live within 200 feet of a development project. Yes, there was an error in the list, says Landgraf. It was provided to the person doing the development, and it didn't include many of you and your neighbors' addresses, but that does not invalidate the hearing that was held. I think they came to terms and they kind of compromised, but it took a long time. This was not good. Sorry, we made a mistake. Too late. That's why you can't let Brigantine run forward because they're not going to pull it back. They're going to lead you into some kind of sense of everything's good. But you thought that the bad news was already shared in Brigantine in regards to short-term rentals. And that answer would be no. I don't think I saw you. I don't think I was able to let you see that letter again, but it's pretty amazing. Yes, there was an error in the list that was provided that didn't include you and your neighbors' addresses, but that does not invalidate the hearing that was held. By law, they have to notify everybody within a 200-foot radius of a project. He makes a mistake, Mr. Landgraf. Yep, we screwed up, but it's too late. It doesn't invalidate the vote. That's wrong. They did come to terms, but still, that was an ugly, ugly mistake and the way he handled it. That's why you got to keep an eye on anybody that's related to zoning and planning and all that stuff. That's where the money is made, everybody. You know that. And if you want to read more about that, that's a story, January 8, 2023, called Landgraf and Ventnor Planning Board Ignore Local Ordinance for the Plaza Plan. The plaza turning out to be excellent. Great landlord, developer, made amends with the neighbors. Everything turned out well. But damn, that was nasty. I'll never forget that one. Forget that one. I promise you. All right. Anywho. I'm getting kind of tired here. This might go on. I'll do another one, but just the last piece here. Keep track of what's happening up on the
But like all good things, it didn't last forever. Airbnb advertised its platform just as hard to new hosts as it did to guests, and investors started buying multiple homes to turn them into Airbnbs. Some hosts turned managing their Airbnb properties into a full-time job, effectively purchasing a job as a hotel general manager. Other hosts took an easier approach. Realtors in high tourist areas started offering short-term property management services where, just like they would manage traditional long-term tenants, the realtors would instead manage the short-term rentals with some services even handling the listing on Airbnb. Their fee was higher, but the higher short-term rental price meant owners still came out ahead. The additional cash flows from higher-yielding short-term rentals also made it easier to qualify for more home loans because the additional income could be used to pay for the loan on the next property and the next property. The inevitable result was clear. For little additional effort, hosts could make more money from their properties, so the market became oversaturated and hosts started to struggle to rent out their properties enough to make it worthwhile. Short-term rentals also made long-term rentals more expensive, so the gap between what someone can make from a short-term rental versus what they can make from a long-term rental is narrowing. For many hosts, it's no longer worth the additional risk and effort to rent out properties short-term, and for
How about that? Pretty good video, gives you some idea of what's what's at stake here. This is a good one too. Check this out.
To me, in Tennessee, a place called Sevier County, there are about 13,000 rental properties there that are short-term rentals on Airbnb. Some of them are Airbnbs, some of them are on different apps like Verbo or whatever, but they're all short-term rentals. Well, earlier this year, back in April, Sevier County voted to start taxing all of these Airbnbs as commercial properties. Basically, they're saying that parcels that are used as short-term rentals are to be classified as commercial unless specific exemptions are met. And they already had 2,500 of these overnight rentals being taxed as commercial. Now, it's going to also include an additional 10,500 properties that are going to be taxed at a 40% rate. It says that it would only impact rentals with a business license and that are not primary residences. So basically homes that are used solely for the purpose of renting out on Airbnb. And so what this boils down to is that if you have a house that's appraised at $500,000 in value, you would be starting to pay about $3,000 a year in county property taxes. Before this measure went into place, that person would only be paying about $1,850 a year in taxes. So still quite low. In fact, far lower than here in Florida. I shared with you guys my future potential property tax bill. It is about $8,800 for the year for a similarly valued property. So it's just insane, the difference here of how much more property taxes cost in Miami-Dade County than Sevier County in Tennessee. It even says here that Sevier County has some of the lowest property taxes in all of Tennessee. And even though these people are going to get an increase, apparently they're still not collecting nearly what they should be, because the last appraisal was in 2021, because Sevier County doesn't do annual real estate appraisals and reevaluate properties every single year. And so whenever they do reevaluate the properties over there, they think that the values are going to shoot up by about 53%, because they're saying it's about 53% undervalued right now. So these guys are going to be getting hit with a surprise new property tax bill when the real value of the property starts being assessed. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because a lot of people are in trouble with Airbnb, okay? People have bought Airbnbs and done rental arbitrage on Airbnbs over the past few years, and it's starting to backfire. You're starting to see a lot of local regulations and legislation now start to make it so this is not a profitable business venture anymore. And if you guys just take a quick look at this map that one of my viewers sent me.
There you go. Is that that kind of news? This kind of news doesn't really get around. It doesn't seem to be very common to find this being discussed in public.
In Tennessee, a place called Sevier County, there are about 13,000.
Let's see here. Turn that off. And we'll turn that off. Well, yeah, sometimes tough to get the heck out of here. Okay, we'll finish it up with the, should I talk about revals? No, that's too scary. So here are the current issues that everybody should be at least considering, okay? After last night's November 1, 2023 council meeting in Brigantine, where they pretty much thought, well, no one's going to know, we might do some spot zoning here in Brigantine, change the rules even more. And we're not going to talk about turning on the camera so we can all watch these, via Zoom and YouTube, watch the planning board meetings. Why not? Why can't we ask questions, right? So here are the latest issues that you may want to chew on. Who's in charge of this whole project, the short-term rental project? There has to be one individual that's the department head of short-term rentals. This is a huge part of the economy of Brigantine, although that economy only benefits a very small handful. It benefits the city of Brigantine, that all that tax money or whatever comes in for them, when the McMansions are taxed at a higher rate because there's so much more square footage. And the people that own the development, the developers, they'll make the money, but nobody else in Brigantine will benefit from this. Nobody. It's going mixed use, mixing commercial and residential. We've heard it multiple times, including from Mayor Lance Landgraf of Ventnor, who helps Brigantine. These should be taxed as businesses because the IRS sees this stuff as a business. It's weird. There's only a 1.25% fee being charged to those who use digital platforms to rent out their place. But There's so many more, so many different ways that people are transacting short-term rentals in Brigantine. This is not good. It's not fair. It's going to leave a lot of transactions not being charged with a fee. Although I do like the idea that local realtors get a bit of a break because they get to vet these renters better. They get to vet the properties. They're likely to live in Brigantine. So I do believe that the human realtors should be protected because they can be sort of like policemen for the short-term rental business. Because the way I see it, the city manager of Brigantine, Tiger Platt, he's going to decide who's a nuisance property. Is it a substantiated complaint? Does it get in front of a judge? Unless I'm wrong, that's the wrong guy to play the judge and jury, really. And it's really time for Councilman Rick DeLucre of the 4th Ward. He's so good at what he does. He's a land use attorney. But for some reason, he did speak last night, and he talked about some gobbledygook about land use. If you could hear it, the audio was so bad last night. But yeah, Rick is something happened, man. They put him in a corner. I really hope that he goes rogue and goes back to the way we love him for what he does best, and that is call out really bad decision making. He knows there's bad stuff going on. Rick DeLucre knows that. Paul Lettieri, another councilman of Brigantine, he knows this is complete and utter a disgrace, but something happened for him to stay quiet. The management companies, these third-party companies, these are absentee landlords. What, are they going to shut them down? No, they're not going to. Unless, of course, they don't like you. They are absentee landlords, these third-party companies, okay? And who are the names? You watch. Now, somebody has to get in front of that microphone and ask the questions. Are you going to let us know who the people are behind the LLCs that are, these are fractional ownerships. Fractional ownership to buy up all this housing. So if you thought about moving and bringing your family to Brigantine to start a family, don't do that. You're going to be overcharged. You won't be able to afford it. The school system might not even be there a year or two from now as the enrollment goes down. This is interesting because most other destinations, shore destinations, they are getting more strict with short-term rentals, where in Brigantine it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. If you don't let people watch the planning board meetings online and you don't allow people to know who's behind the LLCs, you're all frauds. That's what some people would say, right? What are you hiding? And are these properties properly insured? At least $1 million? What if you have a big giant party right next to you? First off, it's going to get tough to sue somebody. You don't know who owns the property, who's in charge of the property. LLC, protect themselves. Somebody gets injured in your house, but next door, what are you going to do? Brigantine will not step up for you. I can assure you of that. Get those planning board meetings on Zoom live. Let them watch the video online. If you miss it, watch it on YouTube immediately, just like the commissioner meetings and the council meetings. And learn everything you can about spot zoning, because it's coming to Brigantine, but they'll claim it's not spot zoning. This is the crew that is going to make your investment in Brigantine superb or a freaking nightmare. Or it'll give you fond memories that you once lived in Brigantine, but now you can't live in Brigantine. Take a good look at that crew. They say nothing. They don't remind you that some of these folks up here are on the planning board. Sera, the mayor's on the planning board. Mike Reardon's on the planning board. Lettieri's on the planning board. Why not chime in? Why don't you remind people? That's right. Just keep on disclosing how things are changing big time everywhere and in Brigantine. Make sure you tell people about that. Explain the National Association of Realtors, the NAR decision yesterday. They found the National Association of Realtors guilty of collusion. Don't double dip. Don't double dip those commissions, right? You know? Find out who's behind the LLCs. Right, Vince? Yeah. All right. Anyway, hey, support the Brigantine Taxpayers Association. They're the only ones really stepping up. The Brigantine Taxpayers Association. Support them. They're the only ones stepping up. All right. Thanks, Mike. BrigantineNow.com. BrigantineNow.com.